What's up, guys? On listening back to the introduction of this interview, I realized I barely mentioned what Arthur Returns, Arthur in Texas, Arthur in Cali actually does. The man is a gifted writer on Substack. You can follow him over there. His handle is at Arthur in Cali, all one word. He has some amazing articles about everything from boomers to freaking RoboCop. He's made appearances on a few other podcasts, I think, but the one I know for sure was the Jay Burden Show, which was the appearance that made me want to talk to him. Arthur is a veteran, a deep thinker, and as I said, a gifted writer. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy our talk together, which ranged from, my God, everything from normie whispering to the mind of the modern leftist to all kinds of fascinating stuff. That's one of the best things about him, is that he has a sober take on a lot of different things. It made for an awesome interview, and I hope you enjoy. I have been lurking around for a while now. Is that like weird to say that I've been lurking around your stuff, Arthur?
No, I've heard that before. Like, oh yeah, I lurked around, read a few of your essays and interesting things.
Yeah, I'm a lurker. And then I think I heard you on, was it Jay Burden?
Yes, I did an appearance on the Jay Burden Show.
Yeah, and that's when I was like, man, I got to talk to that guy because he sounds like he could sell something over the phone with that voice. I'm sure you've gotten that before too, right?
I've heard I have a pretty decent radio voice, but I don't know about the salesmanship.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is radio jobs are in short supply, so that's why we got to be podcasters, you know.
Very true, very true.
So, Arthur, would you categorize yourself mostly then as a writer? Because when I go on your site, I see a ton of articles, all with incredibly interesting headlines, and I just want to read them all.
I would say mainly for the most part, yes, a writer. Before we got on here, I discussed how it was interesting to get the invites to actually speak on shows because I don't see myself as a speaker as much as a writer instead. But the transition, I've been trying to make it about an 80%, 20% writing, speaking.
Yeah, well, I mean, I heard you first on Jay Burden, and that's how I discovered your writing. And I know for me, I have been a writer. Well, not have. I've been a writer. I haven't been like a published writer or anything like that, but I used to be like really, really into writing. Like when I was in college, it was screenwriting and, all my papers got high marks, and I was always like, well, maybe someday people will recognize me for my writing. But it wasn't until I started talking and doing stuff on podcasting that people were like, oh, I kind of would like to see what you write. It's interesting. There's a lot of ways to get into this world, but I think mostly the reason that I felt like we should connect was the way that we communicate our ideas is, how do I say this? It's not bombastic. It's not ridiculous. It's really measured and well thought out. And when I hear you, talking on some of your spaces and things like that, it sounds like I'm talking to a grown-up or listening to a grown-up talk, as silly as that might sound. There's so many people on this scene of what you could characterize as, alternative or right wing or truth telling or whatever, who appear to just like get off on making this as unpleasant as possible. And so I felt like we had something in common there. And you used a phrase before we started called normie whispering. What did somebody like tell you you're a good normie whisperer?
Yeah, I got that compliment quite a while back, actually, after someone had read my stuff. And of course, I'm writing about them saying, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed the writing. And then they said, normie whispering is a talent. And I started thinking about that. I'm going, well, yeah, because with our ideas and the way the state of affairs as it is, as you point out, there are people, especially online, that are there for maximum clicks, maximum engagement, go as hard in the paint with everything. And yeah, they get attention, but those aren't really the people, at least for me, that I'm trying to persuade with these ideas and to point out these things. And, we always forget at times, or at least I do, that not all of us are plugged in on this stuff 24/7, and due to some taking care of some family affairs. I'm normally, Arthur in California, and I am in Texas right now. And so to go around and talk to that exact demographic of the normies, there's so many things that we look at and would say, this is the most pressing issue today that they're not even really aware of right now. It's not
Mm.
their big thing. Of course, they're looking at the gas price go up, up, and up. And, our almost like semi-annual Middle Eastern picnic going on is helping do that. But they're not interrogating the ideas as deeply as we do. So I feel that a lot of times I hate to use the word grifter because it's not all grifters. It's some people that are just really passionate, but the ones who are, posting hard in the paint and really kind of putting the message out, a lot of them I'd say, their heart's in the right place, but it's not going to make it through to the groups of folks who are on that fence, not quite on our side, our guys types, but
Mm.
they're not going to be persuaded by those types of loud arguments. Instead, it needs to have, of course, some finesse, creativity a bit. And I get messages here and there. Well, you didn't mention this, or what about that? I'm going, come on, guys. You gotta use analogies. You gotta use allegories. You have to tell a story here. You can't just put the facts out right there. That's never worked at all whatsoever. For example, we've looked at crime stats for decades. We all know the problem, and yet it's not entirely solved, if ever solved.
A reference I frequently make is to the movie A Serious Man. Did you ever see it?
Years ago,
Do you
years
remember,
ago.
remember the dream scene where he's like working on this big math problem on the board and the guy who's banging his wife is in the audience? And he goes, yes, yes,
Oh,
that's all correct. But is it persuasive? And he goes, of course it's persuasive. It's mathematics. And then he just starts banging his face against the board. And it's like, yeah, man, like you say, crime statistics are not persuasive. And I love what you said about telling a story, because this is something that I have been saying till I'm blue in the face for years. People respond to storytelling. They have to have context. They have to see other things fall into place. Hollywood knew this better than anyone, and then they just decided to stop doing any of it and just start blowing all the time. I find the
well,
same thing is like, if you want to be persuasive, it has to be a story.
Well, and to that point, perfect example, the term heritage American. Look at the level of vitriol and animosity that gets directed and focused towards anyone who says, I'm a heritage American. And they start talking about their story, their family story. Look how mad, the politicians and, of course, their media sycophants, that especially on, of course, on the liberal progressive side, get at that. Like, how dare you say that someone could have roots here or whatnot? All at the same time talking about our magical dirt makes everyone an American and America is just an idea. But then as soon as you start bringing receipts of like, okay, here's what Americans are, that brings up the biggest pushback against that because it tells a story.
Mm. And people are programmed to see symbols, So like and this is what's crazy about the media as a whole is it basically is like a training camp for what symbols you should avoid. So it's like if you hear anybody say crime statistics, right? That's a bad person. Period. Right? If you hear someone start talking about heritage anything, what they're really talking about is like white nationalism and racism and the South will rise again and all of that stuff. Normies are easily vaccinated against these kinds of points because while that is a reality in meme warfare that you do have to have things that are sort of boiled down into individual characters and points, it's really easy to create defenses against those. What it's not easy to create a defense against is a well-told story. And I find, and I'm going to ask a question and stop rambling. I'm a little bit like Jay Burden. I just like go on and on and on before I can get to my question. But what I've found is that people will believe you. You don't have to convince them. You don't have to lie or spin some web. If you just tell them the truth in a compelling way, they go, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Well, definitely. Look at that perfect one. They're eating the dogs. They're eating the cats, and the vitriol pushback on that. Like, no, they're not. So, well, wait a minute. I just saw an article the other day about the duck population in that town, and the park is way down. It is happening. Maybe not so much on the the flair and scale that it was put out as, but it was still true. And it told a story like, yes, these are different people. And possibly maybe they don't, maybe hundreds, thousands of them don't belong in Ohio. That assimilation thing might not be working so well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's crazy to see that, and that's the other thing is like when it rings true, it's not, it's again, it's just like when you've seen it in your real life, it makes a big difference. I guess my next thought is I heard you mention on one of your spaces you were at the hospital and every room in the building was playing Fox News.
Every single room. I'm sorry, every single room, just about. If it wasn't that, it was that MS Now, but there was a majority was Fox News.
Does it feel to you that that method of programming is kind of on its way out?
I do. I really do. Because it's more and more people. We have so many outlets going on, not just with the social media, but with so many other different media outlets that, like them or not, I'll throw a few names out. I like to read, the Federalist, even what was it? Buchanan's. He helped found it. TAC. There's some there. There's just so many more voices out there that kind of counteract the narratives that get put out. The boomer messaging, how they try to that hypnotism from media. Don't get me wrong, it was there, and I've wrote about it as well. That Walter Cronkite was not some magical, soothing, honest voice every single time. The media has been in collusion for a long time. When it was just three channels, but the flip side of it now with so many outlets and sources to use that they can't just keep up the one narrative. Now, also as well, though, that does bring out just a lot of, and I hate the term disinformation. It's not, it's just, there's so much information out there that you have to be able to parse it, peruse through, and try to put the jigsaw puzzle pieces together on what's going on. And, but still, it's good that there's more information out there, and it's not just single direction. Because I'm not that old, but I am old enough to remember when we pretty much, you had your CNN, your Fox News, and MSNBC came online and stuff. And we didn't have social media. And it's it's a double-edged sword. We have social media now. Yay. But at the same time, it does have its positives, and getting information out, different voices, the multiple podcasts, you mentioned Pete, Jay Burden, great shows, getting out information that otherwise would not be out there. It would be in a dusty book in a library somewhere that's not being read much. Now we have terms getting thrown around like, here's what Marcuse said, here's what Jovial, all the older thinkers. And I love to see the resurgence of people talking about Pat Buchanan, Joe Sobran, Sam Francis. Their ideas were just as good and fresh as they were decades ago as they are now.
Yeah, it seems like there's this thing going on right now where with an overabundance of media, it's becoming easier and easier to filter out stuff that isn't down to brass tacks. I feel like in the modern day, especially with Gen Z, people have less and less time for bullshit. And they're getting really good at detecting when something is bullshit. It's like people talk around in circles and they sort of draw a picture that's like half the truth. And people go, oh, yes, this is it. This is it right here. But the more that goes on, the more we can detect those patterns. And I see this a lot with Gen Z where they'll just shut something off in like 15 seconds. They'll hear some like code word or something. Just, oh, no, that's no good. I don't want to listen to that guy. Well, why not? Because, I don't know. It made me feel funny. He was talking in circles. He's not talking about real things. I just did an interview with a friend of mine who's, not significantly younger than me, but he is technically Gen Z, whereas I am a unholy millennial or whatever. And we just sit there and talk, and it's like the stuff that he would hear that came from Fox News, particularly about the Zionist project going on with and the war and all of that stuff. He said at some point it just made him feel funny, so he stopped listening to it, and that was good enough for him.
It's oh, sorry.
No, please go ahead.
I was going to say, I really try to, try to keep a keep an ear down and listen to Gen Z, Gen Alphas, and those underneath us, because you have the picture being painted by a lot of the mainstream, and then you have, a lot of the realities that they're not seeing the forest for the trees, because these guys, it's amusing to me, the sacred invocations of phrases like, say, the politicians saying, the American people. We can't even define what an American is right now. It's so kind of just up in the air. So when these guys hear that stuff, that they shut it off right there, like, okay, this
Mm-hmm.
person is, not understanding the realities of us living in a multi-ethnic democracy. So this pandering to the American people, it's it's Ted Cruz level, hilarity to me.
Mm-hmm. You want to do
And
some?
they see that, and they see that.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. Is like, oh yes, the American people just magically want whatever it is that I want. One of my favorite things that I would see from leftist politicians is they'd say the American people are a forgiving and loving and diverse and fill in the blank with the word group of people, and it's like I'm looking around and I'm like, well, who are you talking about? Like we are simple folk for the most part. We want to work and we want things we want gas prices to not be too high. We want to be able to afford a future, like a house maybe somewhere. What does this American people care about equity and all your commie speak, um
Well, exactly. I don't know if you heard of the late great Z Man. He was a prolific writer, podcaster, went on a lot of shows and stuff. And his back catalogs and even his old shows are worth listening to still. But the Z Man had, his analogy. One of my favorite ones was cloud people versus dirt people.
mm,
And of course, the cloud people are the laptop class, the ones who are doing very well economically, your donor class style. And then, of course, the dirt people, which is kind of the rest of us, the working class, heritage Americans, the not the rubes, but the people who, when they say the American people, they're talking at them. They're not talking to them, pretty much. Like, this is what we're doing. So we're saying the American people. And for myself, I don't know if I already brought it up. I'm retired military. Thankful and blessed on where I'm at. I'm not quite up in the clouds at that level, but I have a fairly good bird's eye view. And it's still striking to me that within the circles I run in and where I'm at, kind of just the lack of empathy at times. But it almost seems to come from a place of fear of losing that perch. You know what I mean? Where there's people that were doing very well, but at the same time, it's like, hey, what about folks here in this pick a state, that just got hit by a, a disaster, and they'll say, well, that's too bad, the government will take care of them. And I'm like, but they're not. They're not
right.
taking care of them.
Right, like
That's not happening.
there was the floods or the flood in Texas, and then there was another one, a hurricane that came through, and these things are just written out of the news. Nobody cares about them anymore. People suffered; they lost their homes, and nobody talks about it.
The Carolinas, that
Mm-hmm.
happened, worst in the world. And there was even a back and forth. I don't know if you remember, it was on X, Twitter, however you want to say it, where Elon Musk was literally talking to Buttigieg at the time, going, they're telling my helicopter that it can't land here with supplies. And he says, I'll get right on that. And you're going, wow, we're watching this play out in real time of the richest man in the world trying to help Americans. And Buttigieg is, oh, good. I saw that on Twitter. I'll tell them. I'll get on that. Like,
Unreal.
what have we come to it? This is, it's very surreal to watch at times, the things that happen. You saw today, Pam Bondi finally got out. I guess the Dow's at 50K didn't seem to land as well.
Yeah,
But
I love that. Cloud people and
it's,
dirt people.
yeah, that was I really, that one really kind of just succinctly put it in focus for me on where we're at in a way, because you look back to the past, and not even that far back, but it really did seem like the government seemed to care about America. And now it's, you have certain people like Nimrata Haley. You remember her statements when she was running for president that America doesn't need, Israel doesn't need America. America needs Israel. And
Oh,
you're talking about, no matter your thoughts on the whole Israel thing, that's a foreign country. It would be just as weird if they said, you know, uh, America doesn't need France, or France doesn't need America. America needs France. That would be weird as well.
it's all weird. And I think that's the exact connection point is the this so-called democracy in which we live in, the will of the people of the demos is completely ignored, steamrolled. In fact, uh, what normal people want, and by normal I mean, people who support everything, are just totally forgotten and ignored, and not only, like I said, not just ignored, steamrolled, and they're laughed at and talked about like they're idiots. But like I went from, I personally went from a pretty a dirt people job to all of a sudden, having a laptop job. The disconnect that happens is slow, but in relative terms to a lifetime, it's almost immediate. You suddenly stop being able to communicate with people who sweat for a living. And I was hoping that would never happen to me. And I frequently went down to visit the guys who I used to work with. But at a certain point, you just realize that there is a huge disconnect there. But I remember being on the other side of that. And when the laptop people came through, it was like the beautiful ones were on their way through. It really reminded me of Snowpiercer in a lot of ways.
No, you're exactly right. I think we both kind of come from a similar background on that. As I said, didn't start out like this, and then through some luck, work, and circumstance, ended up on a different level. But it can set you a bit apart from the roots. But at the same time, when they discuss the American people and they're very derisory about it, they're talking about the people who still have pictures of their great grandpas from World War II up on the wall, pictures of their their uncles from Vietnam and in their gear up on the wall and stuff. And these are the Americans. These are the people that are here who helped build this place. And for all of their concerns to just be cast aside over and over, it's quite the farce. And there's example after example. I mean, look at the gay marriage affair. What was it? 34 out of 38 state referendums where the voters, the American people, voted it down, said no. But then, of course, 9 unelected tribal elders, Supreme Court, just magically said, "Oh, okay, nope, that's legal now. That's fine." Right. And then you'll have media itself talk about how they'll utilize polling when it's useful. If it's something bad, oh, well, 80% of Americans, they don't want this. The president or administration should, and not even just this administration, any administrations, but they'll use that. But then all of a sudden, like say the SAVE Act, it comes up, and allegedly 80% of Americans want that. They want an ID to be presented. They want to know that people voting in this country actually should be voting. And it's even bipartisan. And that's just cast aside and talked about it's going to be the new Jim Crow. And oh my gosh, we can't do that. And just real quick, a funny story on that one. When I got to California, I went to vote, and it was my first time voting there. I show up at the voting place. I have my ID, of course. I even had, I think, 2 pieces of mail, a bill showing my address and whatnot. And I walk up to the lady and I pull all that out, and she says, "Oh, no, sir, you don't need any of that. Actually, we can't even ask about that or look at it." And I was like, "Oh, wow. Okay." So I just write my name down and, do a little scout's honor that this is me. And at that same moment, I look over and they're giving language assistance to a voter to vote. I'm going, what kind of system is this? Ma sacred democracy, or the jokes just write themselves. Like, and California itself, not to go on a tangent on the voting there, but I always feel a little bit like I have a special kind of perspective on that because I was born and raised in Texas, but I've been in California for almost 2 decades, even though I come back home to visit just about every year. So it kind of gives me that kind of California Texan hybrid status. So I can see things there. And everyone sees the Fox News perspective of California. As I think, as I said on Jay's show, they just see LA and San Fran, and it's a huge state and so many different cultural enclaves and ways of life and traditions and whatnot. But a big part of California's downfall really started with the 1986 Reagan Amnesty Act. And people can hem and haw and say, "Oh, but he was promised that they were going to, enforce the border." And there was all these things that were promised. And I'm going, Reagan wasn't a stupid guy. You got to write that stuff down. If it wasn't written down, it wasn't going to happen. So I'm not going to give him a pass for that. But that led to the downfall of California. It really did. They even voted in Prop 187, saying that they did not want illegal immigrants to utilize services and whatnot. They wanted to get a handle on the state's problem. And it got passed by, I believe, 60+% of the voters in 1990s California. And of course, once again, the bill made its way up to some federal judge there, and she struck it down as unconstitutional for the state. And there was not a single pushback from any of our supposed, conservative legal eagles or any of the groups. None of that happened back then. It was just handed over. Here's California to the liberals. Here you go.
It's unreal.
Sorry for the tangent.
No. I totally understand. I totally understand, because that was one of the things I said I wanted to talk to you about was, for me, it's just easier to say we don't live in a democracy. It's just easier because, I've done plenty of reading, and I like to think I have some idea of how power works and that sort of thing. But, I think for me, the picture of sweaty bean counters leaning over calculators being like, oh man, Arthur voted this way and Aaron voted that way, and it's come down to one vote. You really think that's how decisions are made? You really think that? Like, that's kind of where I get with it. It's like, they don't listen to us. And, it's funny. I was reading an article from 1992. It was older than me. And I was like, in the article, this guy's like, the only thing that can fix the future is more democracy. I'm like, all this preening and yelling about how important it is to our democracy. I'm like, we don't freaking live in one. Like, it's like they have to keep reminding us, it's a democracy. It's democracy. It's not. That's not how friggin' power works. Are you kidding? I don't know. Exactly. Now there's my tangent.
No, you're exactly right. But, we make jokes a lot about the progressive class of politicians, the liberals and whatnot, the Democrats, but calling them theater kids is almost, I don't think that's really effective, because when you think about it, yeah, they are theater kids, but guess what those theater kids do? They hit their marks, they say their lines exactly. That Virginia governor's race. Was it the day of she got sworn in, or the very next day where they're throwing 50+ pieces of legislation against the wall? And it was things of all things in Old Dominion, Virginia, gun bans, assault weapons bans, and just all sorts of crazy things. And your normal kind of, I like to call them, the Connie gatekeeping media, but essentially just mocked it and said, how, well, a lot of this stuff's not going to pass. Well, of course not. Hopefully it gets into the courts, but you're not even bringing up the question of why was it allowed to come forth in the first place? We're sitting here watching, supposedly, your almighty GOP grifting off a patriotism party has the House and the Senate, and they can't even get rid of the filibuster. Oh no, what if we do that? What if the Democrats use it next? Like, then don't let them. Get rid of it, pass everything. We should be seeing so many bills going through. Yeah, sure, the EOs were great when he first came in, but those don't stick. Those don't last. Get the legislation in place. I think a judge just today came up with it. What was it? It struck down something the administration did, and they said because it was already made a law by the Biden administration. It's like, well, okay, so you're essentially saying anything the government does stays there forever. Well, then, guys, you better put it in writing and get it in there so it stays there forever, and they won't do that. And it's just, I went over this. I did an appearance on the pirate radio with Rudy. We did, will conservatives govern, and pretty much hit those points of you just have a lot of people who couldn't hack it as a Democrat and jumped in as a Republican just to get into office. And they're just pretty much, waiting out the clock on this administration. And then they can hopefully go back to being the uniparty. It goes back to that governor of Oklahoma. He just did an NPR interview a few weeks ago. And I posted on that and noted how come this wasn't in the transcript? And what the NPR interviewer asked was, well, what do you say to your voters? Because Oklahoma allegedly is the red state with a Republican governor and a Republican legislation. And he asked them, what do you say to your constituents who aren't happy with the cultural changes from all of the mass immigration? I'm paraphrasing, but essentially he was asking, what do you say to them who aren't happy with all of this? And he chuckled out loud while he was answering and talked about some platitudes about the Constitution and mod democracy and whatever. But what struck me was how he said, They can move. They can move.
Ugh.
You're putting, I mean, and it's like, did everyone else hear that? That this supposed Republican governor of Oklahoma, red state, when if his constituents who voted for him say, "Hey, we don't like our communities being just flooded by the third world, however you want to put it, by people incompatible," well, you can just move. I mean, what does that say to the whole voting, process within itself? It says it's just an entire farce.
Yeah. And it also just like it reveals a lot. I mean, and it's amazing to me that it's that on the nose now, but it reveals a lot about how they think about us. It's we're in the way. You can move, get out of the way, you know? Feels like that a lot. And it's kind of felt like that my whole life. Like, it's funny
Well,
because I did this bit a while back about what it would sound like if we had a president who was actually doing something for us. And I used like an AI voice changer and all this fancy stuff to like, and I made it sound like it was on an old TV, and I put patriotic music behind it. And it was just like, all I did was list out sensible things that would make sense if we had a president that was actually working for us. And it was kind of stunning how simple it all is. You see the meme, the fix everything easily button.
uh-huh.
We don't do that. We get platitudes and we get, you can just move because this is the way of the future.
Well, and back to one of the original questions you asked when we came on, about discussing the detachment of government from the
Mhm.
ordinary people and their concerns. I'd say how they stumble over this and just kind of put it right out there. The lack of finesse or creativity, that doesn't bode well if they're not even really putting the work in to hide it too much. You think back to just a few decades ago, the work they put into it to really kind of massage the messages and get it out there. That's gone. It's more or less a kind of just hands up in the air. Oh well, happy Pakistani American Day in say Delaware, or happy Somali American Day in Oregon.
Yeah.
Pick some ridiculous made up thing.
Yeah. And like you say, they don't bother hiding it anymore. And that's because I think they think the frog is boiled. you know, I think they think that it's over. Why pretend? And it goes to my theory that everyone and everything is just getting lazier. Like I think cloud people are only getting lazier, and you can see this with how they're trying to run their organizations with AI. And there's we'll just replace the workers with a robot. It's like, man, if you think you can do that, you have never worked a day in your life. It's
No, exactly.
they think that these jobs are like simple and that you could just program a robot to do it. I don't know. I have yet to see it, Maybe I'll be wrong someday. But what I know about technology is that it has diminishing returns, generally speaking, and it can't just do everything. But these people seem to believe that. And they also seem to believe that the so-called underclass or whatever are just a bunch of idiots who are mouths to feed, employees to have. And it's funny. It seems to be it's a tale as old as time that these industrialist types think that, oh, we'll just get a fancy new machine and that'll take care of the whole problem. But you always need somebody watching over the thing to make sure it doesn't freaking blow something up. I don't know. There's my tangent.
No, exactly. I mean, just like you said about how they put so much trust in the faceless machine to do it all. And at times, to me, it's felt as if how many wake up calls is God going to give us, or whatever you believe in, before we start getting it? And do you recall the hacking of the Colonial Pipeline a few years ago?
Oh, that sounds familiar. Remind me.
Yeah, so we have the refineries down south in Louisiana, but all that oil, refined oil and whatnot, and I might be getting some of the particulars incorrect, but this Colonial Pipeline goes through, I believe, roughly like 7 or 8 states, goes all the way up almost the entire eastern coast. And it got hacked, and they wanted a ransom to turn it back on for a moment there. And I'll never forget, it was of course, some sort of public presentation, and they had the CEO of the company there up front answering questions and whatnot. And one of the reporters asked, well, hey, how come you can't just get some guys to go out there and just manually run this, fix it, do whatever, get the roughnecks out there, get the pipe workers. And he pretty much said, we don't have those people anymore. Those
Oh my
people are
God.
retired or dead. We can't just call anybody up. All of this is run. This is all automated now. And so you imagine to yourself just that scenario, and we've seen plenty of others, but that one was striking to me because that's straight attack to our infrastructure, straight to our energy, everything. And you have, as you pointed out, all these cloud people discussing how wonderful AI is going to take all of this. It's going to do all these jobs. And yeah, I mean, by all accounts, it looks like it'll be able to do a lot. But what happens if the next hacking occurs? What if someone hacks into, say, the Waymo, and you have thousands of people riding around in the driverless cars and they all crash? Or, I mean, horrific scenario, but that's how my mind works. I just see all the what ifs here. And the Colonial Pipeline gets hacked. It gets shut down for almost a week. Gas went up for a little bit. And then, of course, I don't remember if they had to either pay the ransom or got a really smart H-1B to figure out the code and fix it all. I'm being sarcastic, but I'm saying somebody to fix it. And then we all just moved on as if this isn't a clear and present danger that we just witnessed that could apply to so many other industries if you try to automate every single little thing.
It reminds me of a short story that I read a while back, several years ago. I put it on my old podcast. We talk about dead people, available everywhere. It was called The Machine Stops. And it was written by a guy named E.M. Forster. And it was 1903 that it came out.
Oh, wow.
And it was about this. It was about a planet-spanning technological grid, so to speak, where everything was taken care of always. And one of the main characters was, seeking to be free. So he found that he had to break out of the machine and go places he wasn't supposed to go. But at the end of it's called The Machine Stops. It's a short story. But at the end of the story, the machine begins to stop. And they go, well, good thing we have this other machine to repair the machine. And within a few paragraphs, it's like, but that machine wasn't working. And the whole thing collapses in on itself. It's an amazing, amazing read. But that's what it makes me think of, because the whole time, the only guy screaming bloody murder, like we need to figure out a way out of this thing, is treated like a criminal. And everyone else, oh, it's just fine. It's fine. And then when it starts breaking down, it's like, I tried to warn you. But cloud people have this like beautiful little place they can go in their head where somebody down there will fix this. Well, if that somebody down there doesn't have a job or has been gotten rid of and replaced with a robot or whatever, you're not going to have a machine for much longer. And I guess I wasn't expecting to talk about a technological grid, but this is one of the modern problems that we have, is that all of this stuff rests on thousands and thousands and thousands of people who are just invisible to the people who sit on top of it. So again, I think a Snowpiercer, but at the risk of sounding like some kind of because when you talk about workers, like that's like commie coded or something. So I assure everyone I'm not a commie, but I think it's really important to think about those people who can do those things, and you can't just replace them. And it's not, oh, how dare you replace them? It's, you can't replace them. You need them. I don't know.
I think, well, no, you're entirely correct. And as you talk about the cloud people with Snowpiercer, I think for me, the best analogy on that, or the best comparison, is Elysium. I mean, everyone remembers the sci-fi movie Elysium. All the rich are up in their nice little bubble above Earth, and they have the machines to do everything for them. But it still takes the workers down, the dirt people on Earth itself, to continue the whole entire process, to keep it propped up, as you say, as we know. And it's their ideas of how all this is supposed to work, when correctly pointed out, there are thousands and thousands of nameless, faceless people that keep all this going. Just for example, being here in Texas and taking care of some family affairs, there's so many people that are behind the scenes that have helped out beyond what they're supposed to be doing to keep things going, that I've seen. And that, you repeat that all across our country. And that just this idea that just with the flip of the switch, all these things can become automated and, entirely faceless. and it's all just going to work out for the best is it's folly at its greatest peak. I'm no Luddite, but I understand, like, for AI in itself, we're talking about a technology that is at the toddler stage. It's walking around, it's bumping into things, and you have all these people professing that, well, by next week it's going to be mowing the lawn, with the zero turn, and the week after that it's going to be flying you to Vegas. Like, whoa, slow down. The little AI is just getting his weight under his feet right now, and he just knocked over my coffee off the table. I don't know if we should give him the keys to the car yet.
Yeah. I actually have a funny story. One of my co-hosts, Daniel, we met when we were down in the Dirt People job together. And, he didn't go as white collar as I did, but I was really happy that we got to meet in that situation. I met my fiance in that situation. I'm really glad we did, because it teaches you a lot. But one picture is, it was a warehouse job, right? So if you were in custodial, you had to take care of, different parts of the warehouse. So you might have an entire 4-story modular that you had to look after. But the one job that everybody seemed to want was the front office, right? Because the front office was just sweeping and there was nobody there. There was no night shift. So you just did all your stuff when nobody was there. And it was easy because it was post-COVID. And there, when I say there was nobody there, I mean, when it was at max, there were 15 people in the building. So everybody wanted that job. But I knew I never wanted that job because I didn't want to talk to office people or hear their complaints about things that they found that were dusty. Daniel took that job. And it was so funny. I didn't want to give him any crap for it. But I remember the first time he got a talking to about missing a spot, because the office people set off a glitter bomb in the office, and he had to clean it up. And the next day they came in, and the floor was still a little bit sparkly in places, because cleaning up glitter is really freaking hard. It's just one of those situations where it's like, man, I didn't want to do crossover with loud people because they ask for things that they don't realize are actually really big deals. I only have a few things on here that I really want to cover, but one of them is it's too general, I know, but hopefully you can spring from this. When you talk about these people who lack empathy, what in your mind is a leftist? Is that too broad?
Yeah, that is pretty broad. I know the leftist tendency to have kind of like a geographical empathy, not around themselves, to not worry about certain things if it doesn't fit in within their ideological spectrum. If it saves just one life, and you're going, okay, well, if we cut off mass immigration, that'll save many, many, many American lives. Oh, no, we can't do that. No, wait a minute.
Yeah, it's the trolley problem.
Yeah, I mean, their own hypocrisies to them, it's not ideologically indifferent to have that one viewpoint one day if it's for their guys, and then to change it entirely if it's for not their guys. And so for all the pontificating against the friend-enemy distinction, they utilize it all the time.
And what do they consider a friend?
Well, someone in lockstep with their ideological beliefs. You look at, for myself in California, I don't live close to, I guess you could say, a lot of the leftist nerve centers. I'm not just outside the parking lot of Berkeley or, downtown Los Angeles or somewhere in, say, Sacramento or San Francisco, but there are ideas that permeate. And when you say, well, hold on, you said this $1 billion a year was going to solve this problem, like, say, homelessness. And now it's just caused even more homelessness. Things are worse, but you felt good doing it. And that's what counted. That's what mattered. Yeah. And so they're not looking for solutions, and they entirely don't understand that some things don't have a solution, only trade-offs. Thomas Sowell, that's one of his quotes, of course, there aren't solutions, there's trade-offs. And they can't seem to fathom that whatsoever. They'll jump out there and holler, no kings. What was this, the third iteration they did over this weekend? The wheelchair and cane brigade came out, And, it was striking to see some pictures of these crowds. And by and large, it was just it was a reunion of 1968, or, pick your hippie, protest from that time frame,
Mm.
because that was by and large your population. And I don't think they really seem to understand. This is kind of on a separate thing, but these older generations, not all, and I always have to, even when I've written about this, one of my biggest hits was a essay I did, boomers destroyed America. And, but I was quick to point out that some of the greatest, virtues and attributes that I have in my life came from boomers, hard work, saving, and everything, patriotism, everything else. But at the same time, these folks a lot of them don't seem to see the forest for the trees. They're saving up for the next cruise, or, oh my God, my 401k went down 10%. Or nowadays, now they're rollover IRAs or whatever, because they're already past that point. Or no, we didn't go see the grandkids this year, but have you seen the new lake cabin that we bought? And it's, it's tantamount to, they didn't care about planting any trees that they wouldn't see the shade. They don't seem to, they're celebrating while things are just kind of going down the drain a bit. It's like playing the band playing on the Titanic, and the younger generations are all the lower class passengers stuck below the waterline right now. And I don't think they understand the level of rage on that one, and how that's not a good idea to have millions and millions of young men that don't see a prospect for buying a home, creating a family, having a meaningful job,
Mm-hmm.
all those things. And it's all kind of starting to come to a bit of an apex point. And if we can't stop just worshiping the almighty Excel GDP Excel spreadsheet god, I don't know where this goes. They can cheer on about cloud people's stock market values or all these other things, but when you get down on the ground and you start seeing that, personal experience for me, I have children. They're not going anywhere. They're staying with us until things can actually work, because there are no apartments that are reasonably for rent. There are no starter homes. Case in point, I bought my very first home in California, and everyone thought the price was crazy at $160,000 in 2009. It was a 4-bedroom, 2-bath, backyard, front yard, a starter home, and I sold it actually at a loss in 2016. Not much of a loss, but a little bit. You know what that is on Zillow right now? I just looked it up before we came on here. Allegedly, it's up to $355,000 value.
Jesus.
This is nowhere near the beach, nowhere near any of your location amenities. And I've actually had, and I'll say this derogatorily, I've had boomers say, well, that's just inflation. I'm going, wait a minute. In 10 years, a 4 and 2 nothing home goes from 160 to 355 in the middle of California, and that's inflation. I mean, you got to be telling fairy tales to yourself to believe this stuff.
Man. Oh, yeah. So the boomer topic, I didn't even write any questions. I just wrote boomers, because one of the first articles I saw on your site, on your Substack, was boomers destroyed America. And of course, me being me, I had to click it.
Okay. So you did read it, and
I did
how I
read that one.
discussed. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's once again, it's not about demonizing an entire generation of folks that are all over 65 now or something. No, it's about those who don't have the self-awareness to at least see the problems going on with these generations, and to sit back and say, well, I didn't cause it. It's like, no, but you were in control back then. You voted for these policies have come to fruition now. And instead of going out and putting on a Burger King, crown, and screaming about no kings, why aren't you going after the people who are making your progeny, their lives worse?
Well, they don't believe
Where's
that's
the
happening.
anger on? Yeah, where's the anger on that?
Yeah.
And even the ones who do seem to believe it's happening, they pretend as if it's a leaky faucet and that's all it is, but they haven't opened up the cabinets underneath to see that it's actually a leaking pipe and it's destroying the entire foundation of the home.
Yeah. This is it's crazy to me about. And this is, it's frustrating, because most of the time when people talk about boomers, they're specifically talking about their parents. And I know that's my case when I'm ranting about boomers and stuff like that. I'm usually talking about, if not my parents, then one of my friends' parents. And, I've done some interviews with a friend of mine named Michael on the real estate market, because he works in real estate in Indiana. And the stuff he hears is just like that. It's it's utterly unreal what people say. There's a house he showed me that, like you said, something down in the $100,000 for a house just a few years ago. They're now asking for $750,000 for that thing, and they're wondering why it didn't sell. I mean, it's utterly unreal in the middle of Indiana, where nobody actually wants to be. Come on, Hoosiers, it's true. I lived in Indiana for a while. I can say that. But yeah, man, it's crazy how much of this problem comes from people who don't want to look at it. They don't want to know. I can almost see a movie scene in my head where there's this creature that has been tormented and tortured and suddenly comes up and they're like, I won't look at it. I won't look at it. I just can't think of the movie right now.
No, but like you said, they can't see it. And, even the ones that are online, which they're not a total percentage of all, but some of the posts online, back in my day, I had a truck that didn't have brakes that I paid $50 for, and I had to jump start it with the lawnmower every day to go to work. You too can do that. The bootstrap talk.
Yeah.
Just go into that factory and look the manager in the eye, give him a firm handshake, and you'll get that job, son. And that's the most extreme examples, of people who still think we live in that world. But that world was gone even when I was in high school in the 90s. I can remember a teacher talking about how we needed to, the formula, go to college, get the good job, because you can't just go over to the factory and, not like her dad that worked there for 30 years and now has a pension. She's like, that world's gone.
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking about mid 90s time frame when they were discussing these things.
It's just crazy. It's just crazy. And what's craziest to me is, so I've been running podcasts for several years. Let's just say 7-8 years. And I will cover something on that show 2 years in advance. A good example of this is when I told my parents, don't read the news during COVID because the articles are written by AI. And they were like, what? That can't be. You're crazy. You're like a conspiracy theorist. And now my dad will send me clips of fake Joe Rogan talking about aliens. And he'll be like, this is nuts. I'm like, that's AI. But
and it's so easy to trick them. And of course, the people behind this know this, and they know that within the hierarchy of finances, that's where the money is at.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you saw my post I did not too long ago. I believe I said, just one day answering my nearly 90-year-old father's phone made me want to, erase 1/3 of the globe.
Yeah.
Billions must go. It's scam world.
Yep. That was a hit.
Yeah. And it was, but it was truth, because I've had his phone, of course, in his condition he's in, we talked about offline, and it would ring. And I was thinking, oh, well, this might be a doctor's office or something, because he doesn't have it set up with, how a lot of our phones, we have probable spam or whatever, it pops up. We didn't have any of that. So I'm answering every call. And in one day it was, refinance your home, my friend. Come on. Yes, sir, you can do this. Replace your windows. Even one of them tried, this was amazing, called and said that, you need to pay these unpaid speeding tickets. And I said, oh, speeding tickets. Where are they from? January. I see 3 in January. I'm like, my father was in the hospital in January, and I just hung up. I was going, wow, how did he manage? Because I've looked at all his stuff as with my what powers he gave me and whatnot, and thankfully he was not tricked, except for, of all things, Rocket Mortgage gave him an adjustable rate mortgage loan for a guy who had a stratospheric credit score. And I understand they didn't have a legal fiduciary thing to do there. They weren't, they didn't have to, but it's like you still got one over on a guy nearly 90. And that just, it makes your blood boil, because then you just multiply that by millions of times across the country of people of that age bracket, and how they're just looking like just the easiest target possible. Because you have your boomers that, the conservative guys, as we talked about, walking through the hospital, hearing Fox News on every channel, and then they tell you what they quote unquote think, and it's just bullet points from the last newscast.
Yeah. And
the same thing from the liberal ones, whatever they got off CNN or MSNBC, and they're going, this is my thoughts. And it's like, those aren't your thoughts. That's what the talking box told you. That's
right.
what the bleach blonde lady said just an hour ago on that broadcast.
Oh, that's exactly right. And that's part of that paradigm and why they can be so frustrating. I don't mean to other boomers, but you know what I'm saying. This is a generation that was trained to trust a talking box as long as a stranger with the air of authority said it over their own eyes, ears, friends, and family. They believe that freaking thing over anybody in their lives because it's said with authority and it came from on high. That's what bugs me.
Yeah, for decades they heard, I'm Tom Brokaw and this is the news. Or, I'm Dan Rathers. I'm, pick one of the ones that we were little kids that were constantly on and saying, you need to watch this. It's like the old joke of, it's sunny weather today, but this one grocery store item will kill you. Yeah. Find out at 11. You're like, whoa, wait a minute. Maybe you should put that out now. That seems kind of important. Why do I got to wait 5 hours to find out which product not to buy?
I've characterized the television in the living room as like the uncle you let stay over at the house for a while who was really cool. And then he just gradually got more and more schizophrenic and like paranoid. And you've just gotten used to it. So you have no idea how crazy it sounds to somebody who doesn't know him. And then one day he's just squatting in your living room saying, give your money away to strangers, sell your nation because you love your nation. And here's medical care that will be useful to you, especially if you live in Canada. You know what I mean? Like that's what it's evolved into. And young people are totally right to just distrust anything that looks like this. I had somebody say to me, how does anybody even watch this? It's like a joke. Like the way these people talk, it's like they have a cadence that's depending on what you read, designed by the CIA. It's crazy. I was listening to or re-listening to the Yuri Bezmenov interview, the famous one that's just like a big red pill for people who don't understand this yet. And he just casually mentioned he worked for the KGB, and when he moved to Canada, he immediately got a job in the media. It's like, guys, the media is an intelligence operation. But, they hear spy movies.
Not to plug my stuff again, but I did do an essay, American Miasma. I don't know if you were able to catch that one, where I discussed how jarring it was, because I spent a lot of time overseas, multiple years in a row. And then to come back here, for one, I had my first TSA experience and I wrote about that. That was interesting. But just to get back into that American media bubble that we're in. I mean, I would say for myself, intake on news and information, easily over 90%, just reading the news. I mean, obviously not agreeing with everything, but trying to get as many sources as possible from, the much maligned New York Times to BBC to everything else, just trying to get it all in on the written words, and about 10% of watching, because I just can't stand watching anymore. And within that essay, I talked about how that Michael Crichton, you remember he discussed the Gell-Mann amnesia effect, how you can open up a newspaper or something, read an article, and say you're pretty much a subject matter expert in what they're writing about, but you can tell that the journalist or whomever has no clue about the topic, and you're just laughing to yourself going, this is nuts. But then you'll go to the very next article on the next page, and if it's something you don't know about, you'll take it as the gospel nearly. And for me, coming back, I'll go ahead and say it, I came back right at the end of 2002, and that was when, we got to go to Iraq, and it's they were behind 9/11. Like, no, they weren't. Wait a minute. Saddam didn't do that. Mm-hmm. Or, go buy a Lexus or the terrorists win. And then the discussions about Afghanistan as if there was some Arab Thomas Jefferson just hiding 2 caves over from Osama, and we're going to put him in power. And all these Afghanis, they're going to love democracy and wave their little flags. And wait a minute. That's not true at all either. Yeah. That was kind of my real red pill moment before that even became a thing, of seeing the narratives play out in person there, seeing the discussions of bin Laden, they hate us for our freedoms and they hate us because we have a mall with a hot dog stand. Like, No, he was very specific what they're not happy about. He actually wrote a whole thing about it. And, it was, and of course, to be over there and actually be talking to the people from there, we actually had a translator. He was out of Bahrain or Bahrain, I guess. But I asked him, I said, hey, what are your friends and, what do people think about you working with the Americans? And come to find out, his father worked within the politics there. He was within the administrations of Bahrain, and that's what got him the job. But he was like, some don't like it. They're not happy about it, but others, that's just the way it is. And first time I heard somebody say the burden of empire, I'm like, wow, yeah, we are an empire. Yes, we are.
Mm. Yeah, that I can't imagine how jarring that must have been to come back and just see what everyone back home is hearing. Because what? Let's see. 2002, I was like, what, 6 or 7? No, 7 or 8, right? And I just remember going to school and everyone had these like grave faces whenever the war came up, and you'd lean in and like, that's what we'd talk about. And yeah, we're going to write some letters to the soldiers today, you know? You ever see that one that the kid wrote where it's like, I hope you have a good war?
And kill a lot of people.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I used that in a post.
Yeah. That's probably why I'm thinking of it, because I have been, I did read American Miasma, another banger. In the video, people are going to see I got your site right up right now, so they can go follow it.
Right.
But yeah, man, I cannot imagine coming back to that world. But that's what I'm talking about when I'm saying things are changing, because we don't have this crazy like expectation from the media to just be straightforward with us all the time. It's crazy because, my background being in media, having worked in television and worked on movies and things like that, I feel like I might be lucky to have a better insight to how it works. But I can tell you, even if you know how it works, it still freaking works. You are surrounded, or we are surrounded by people who still take this stuff at face value. And, the classic meme, you are not immune to propaganda. My God. And so anyway, we're coming up on time, but I wanted to get your thoughts finally on, first of all, did you see Trump's speech last night?
I watched about the first 5 minutes of it, and then I had to go do something else. But it's just bullet points of we're winning, everything's great, everything is awesome, and this will be wrapped up with a bow tidy. That was the vibe I was getting from it, pretty much. Very rah speech, of course. Best economy ever, golden age. And you're going, well, some people are doing okay, not too bad, but really, this isn't focusing on America first. This isn't focusing on the domestic issues at hand. Didn't, like I said, I'm cheering my country on and everything, and always will, but it's not exactly what a lot of us voted for to get kind of pulled back into that. And yes, I'm a GWAT vet, so reverberations of that, forever war, those thoughts are in my mind as well. When they started discussing 81st or 82nd Airborne going over there, more troops, and I'm going, has anybody looked at a topography map of Iran? This is a nightmare. It's a desert Switzerland essentially. There's what are we going to do? Pair up with Russia and China and go in through Azerbaijan? Said that wrong, I'm sure, but you know what I'm saying. It's like, what strategy? What is the war plan here? What's going on with this? Love my country, back it, but how is this good for us? I mean, you just told us last summer that we put their nuclear program back a decade plus, and now we've got to do this to stop them from doing that. And it's just the messaging on it is just all over the place. So I do try to look at that scenario with a neutral, kind of value neutral eye a bit. Try to look at it just calculated. Even did a show with the Pirate Radio on that one about Iran and what's going on and pros, cons, and everything else. But overall, it wouldn't have been my choice to do, for sure.
Yeah, I I didn't watch Trump's speech. I only saw people reacting to it, and I was like, I don't think I need to listen to somebody talk me up anymore. I'm a little bit more skeptical of what's actually going on.
Yeah.
And we haven't even broached the topic of Israel, but not every interview I do has to bring that one up because it's on everyone's mind, right? Like it's so freaking obvious now. And it's not even it's so obvious that they don't even ban it on YouTube to suggest such a thing, that this is Israel's war and that sort of thing. I mean, knock on wood. I mean, I might get bagged for that one, who knows, but yeah, so I guess to wrap it up, times are changing, and I really do appreciate I don't want to call it a blog, your Substack, because there's more on there than just random thoughts. It's a well-organized, well-written, beautiful little Substack, honestly. And I enjoy it, and I encourage all of my listeners to go over there and sub to it, or at least read a couple of the articles, because they're informative and they're good. And there is something, as we started the conversation talking about normie whispering, and it's the strategy that I like to take where, if you really get me going and, like I'm fooling around on a live stream or something like that, or talking to somebody who's into like conspiracy and stuff, I'll talk about conspiracies. Friggin' Newsfist and I have been working on like 5 parts of a conspiracy pyramid. But I don't think that connects with people. And it turns out that a lot of it's just like, I don't want to say edutainment. It's more like entertainment. It's not even really teaching you anything. What I'm interested in are people who talk on the ground level, make sense, and aren't hysterical, because we don't need any more of that stuff in this influence economy. But Arthur, did you have any final thoughts before we wrap this up?
No, I just want to say again, thank you for inviting me onto the show. And my Substack, nothing is paywalled. It's all there to read. And I just really shoot for a wide readership versus heavy monetization, as they say. Just really want to get my voice heard, get my words, get the written word read. So, no, I think we covered a lot. I mean, we could have gone in depth on a lot of our things that we touched upon. Could have been shows within themselves, for sure.
Well, that might mean we have to do a part 2 or a live or something like that. I know one of my favorite things that, I don't know if you recently started doing this, but just finding that you did spaces made me really happy. So maybe we could set something up like that at some point where we can sit there and, I don't know, get some conversation going, because when you're doing an interview, it's one thing, but when you can hear from ordinary people and their thoughts and that sort of thing, I just think that's so freaking valuable. It was one thing that I don't remember. I don't remember if I mentioned it to you or if I said it to my fiance. I don't remember, but I was saying that it was just so good to sit and listen to normal people talking about life. Because, like I said, I am a bit of a cloud person now.
Definitely, yeah. And that's what I really enjoy about the spaces. When I host those, you can control the mic. So every once in a while, you hand one out, and it's just another kook on the internet, and you can just shut them off right there and go back to the conversation. So having that control is good as well.
And your handle is Arthur in Cali?
Yes.
Okay, Arthur.
Well, no, on Twitter it's at Arthur Returns with 2 S's.
All right, let me bring it up. For
my first, my first account, I was shooting past 3,000, then it got nuked for no reason whatsoever. So I had to restart.
It's a common story. I got a friend of the show in Texas. I mention him all the time, and he was like, "Yeah, I got nuked for no reason." I'm like, "I don't know, man. Like, you seem like the type who said something really, really, really biting that they hated." But here up on the screen is where you can follow. I recommend everybody do it. Subscribe to the Substack. Support the man. I know he doesn't do it for money, but it sure does help things feel like they're making an effect. Arthur, I appreciate you taking the time. We'll do this again.
Thank you for having me. Yes, sir.